Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another broadcast of New Hope Assembly of God. You're here with Reverend Kevin Richards. I'm here today to share with you the Word of God and to share with you in this moment of hearing what God has to say to you. We thank you for taking the time out to share this moment with us. As we proceed, I want to first of all say welcome to everyone who has joined us this morning. Welcome to you all. I want to welcome all the mothers who are on here with us this morning to give God thanks for you, because without you, we would not be here. The reason why we're here is because of motherhood. And so I want to send our appreciation to all the mothers out there, especially the mothers of New Hope Assembly of God, who have given their hands to shaping and forming our generations. I want to say thanks to you all for your commitment, thanks to you for your dedication, and thanks to you for the time you have taken to ensure that we are taken care of. Your nurture and your love has kept us all these years. I want to say thank you. And on today, that special day, I want to say Happy Mother's Day to you all. God bless you. All right, today, as we come together, let's first of all give thanks to God for Him being here with us and for Him allowing us to see this time. Hallelujah. So as we gather, let's give God thanks for this moment, and let's ask Him to cover us as we proceed. Bless the Lord. Father, we thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your love. We thank you for your mercies. Our thanks rise to you this morning because we know that we are here because of you. It's because of your goodness, because of your love, why we are here today. And I want to say thank you, Lord. And as we come together today, Father, may your words be broken to our hearts, Lord, that our hearts may receive your words, O God, as seeds upon good soil. That as we receive your words, Lord, we'll be able to employ it in our lives, and that, Father, we'll be able to practice it, and once more bring glory to your name. We give you thanks in Jesus' name. Amen. Hallelujah. This morning, our word will be coming from the book of Proverbs, chapter 9, and We'll be reading from chapter 9, verse 1 to verse 18, sorry. And I would love for us to follow in your Bible as we read from the Word of God. Today the reading will be done by Sister Kamara Bentley. So she'll be reading to us today from Proverbs chapter 9, from verse 1 through to verse 18. So as we go, let's hear from Sister Kamara Bentley as she reads.
Places of the city. Whoso is sinful, let him turn him hither. As for him that wanted understanding, she said to him, Come, eat of my bread, and drink of the wine which I have mingled. Forsake the foolish and live, and go in the life the way of understanding. He that reproveth a scorner giveth to himself shame, and he that reproveth a wicked man getteth to himself a lot. Reprove not a scorner, lest he hate thee. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love thee. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be yet wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. For by me thy days shall be multiplied, and the years of thy life shall increase. If thou be wise, thou shalt be wise for thyself. But if thou scornest, thou alone shall bear it. A foolish woman is clamorous, she is simple, and knoweth nothing. For she sitteth at the door of her house, and a seat in the high places of the city, to call passengers who go right on their ways. Whoso is simple, let him turn hither. And as for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, Stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. 18 and ending. But he knoweth not that the dead are there, and that her debts were in the depths of hell.
I want to apologize for that technical difficulty a while ago with you not hearing any sound. So I was saying that today is that day we celebrate Mother's Day. That day we take time out to let our mothers know that we do appreciate them and we do love them. It doesn't have to be the mother who bore you into this world. It doesn't have to be a biological mother, but let it be known by her that you do love and appreciate her. So take the time out today to make sure you send that message of love and that gift of love to that person who nurtured you and mothered you and cared for you as you were developing and as you are still developing. Do take time out to send those words of appreciation to those individuals who take the time out to make sure that you're cared for. Amen. Bless the Lord. So I want to turn our attention to our text this morning, which is from Proverbs chapter 9. And I want us to take time out to look at it and to really see what it's saying to us. Our theme for this month is Fear God and Live. And as we look at this theme, I want us to keep that in mind as we must also keep in mind that we are focusing this year on His presence, being in His presence by His grace. So the presence of the Lord, we understand, is what enables us to live and to live that quality life. The only place a man truly shines, the only place a man truly thrives is in the presence of God. And throughout this year, our focus will remain in that context. And so as we keep that in the back of our minds, that we are looking at the presence of God and how we thrive and survive as a human, we also want to be reminded that this thriving, this excelling of humanity and us as human beings can only be done in the presence of God. And also we must also find ourselves at that place now where we understand that a part of us thriving and existing in the presence of God, we have to learn also to fear God, because it is the fear of God that is going to keep us going. Because until you fear God, you will not be able to experience the beauties and wonders and power of God in your life. So the fear of God is a fear God and live. Today, as we look at Proverbs chapter 9, I want to theme it with this theme: choose wisdom. It is time to relocate. Choose wisdom. It is time to relocate. As we look into the text of Proverbs chapter 9, you will discover in that text that Solomon speaks about wisdom with a sort of language that is not something that you are maybe readily understanding. But he uses some metaphors in that passage that we may not readily understand in the context of our present day culture. And so, because it is written to a culture of people that is far different and far removed from our culture, there are some things that we have to come to understand. But we won't spend much time going into that today. We will take time out to understand and try to deduce from it what Solomon was saying to his people, and then by virtue of that, try to understand what he would be saying to us as a people in this day and age. So we'll look into that passage now, and let's get into our text to really understand what it says to us. Solomon starts out in this passage by saying to us, wisdom has built her house. So the first thing we must acknowledge is that Solomon is personifying wisdom in that of a female, a woman. And so he says, wisdom has built her house. In verse 1, that is where we find him starting off this text by speaking thus. And so as he speak of wisdom as a woman, he's going to talk about some things that is going to really be, primary in us understanding what he's driving at. And so, first of all, we must understand, something about this book of Proverbs. Very important for us to understand that. Proverbs is basically a collection of wisdom teachings that offer advice and prudent and righteous living. It offers advice about prudent and righteous living. And these anecdotes and poems and sayings are all collected together and are compiled in this book called Proverbs. But you must also understand that these poems, these anecdotes, these sayings, these proverbs, they're all compiled together, but not just thrown together like that. I believe that all these proverbs, all these sayings, all these poems, they are compiled together in such a way that they have a message that goes forth, an essential message. And so therefore, we have to understand that this book, though it is seemingly a book that does a compilation of proverbs and saying, we must understand that it's not just a compilation of sayings. It has structure to it. It has some it has a theme that runs through that book. And so we must therefore try to understand its theme and try to understand what it's driving at. Solomon, in essence, is giving us instructions as to really what it is that we must focus on in life. And as he goes through these, he would have come to some statements at the beginning of his book and at the end of his book that highlight some of the major themes of this book. But nonetheless, we want to zero in today on his talk, on his discourse concerning the fear of God. This theme of the fear of God, it does not start in this book of Proverbs. We find at the first place we see this theme or this phrase, the fear of the Lord, is in Job. And in Job says in his discourse, he says, the fear of the Lord, that is understanding, or that is wisdom. So Job identifies that the fear of God, that is wisdom. And so we must understand that Job is therefore saying to us that the fear of God, that is wisdom. And he identifies wisdom as the fear of the Lord, or the fear of the Lord as wisdom. So in other words, if you don't fear God, then you're foolish. In essence, that's what Job is saying to you, that if you don't fear God, you're a fool. So Job, in essence, is trying to identify to us that the fear of God is wisdom. Solomon, on the other hand, in this book of Proverbs, in verse 10, he says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So Solomon takes the same phrase and he says it in a different way, but yet saying the same thing. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. In other words, while Job would have said it is wisdom, Solomon says it's the beginning of wisdom. And we're going to look at that as we proceed. But here, I want you to understand that chapter 9 of Proverbs is one of those sections of Proverbs that is a discourse. It's a complete discourse. And throughout Proverbs, you will not find that there's a lot of discourses. But here, chapter 9 is a discourse. And the preacher gives a discourse concerning this whole aspect of wisdom. And so he starts out, he says, wisdom hath builded her house. She hath hewn out her 7 pillars. She hath killed her beast. She hath mingled her wine, and hath also furnished her table. She hath sent forth her maidens. She cried upon the highest places of the city. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. As for him that wanteth understanding, she said to him, come, eat of my bread, and drink of the wine I have mingled. Forsake the foolish and live, and go in the way of understanding. Here, friends, we must see that Solomon paints a picture of wisdom. So he's giving us a true picture of what wisdom is. So he's identifying wisdom for us. And so we have to first understand what wisdom is before we can truly understand how to get it and how to utilize it. And so therefore, we have to first understand that. Last week, we spoke about the fear of the Lord being wisdom. We mentioned that it is not wise to not fear God. And so we talk about a few things concerning the fear of God. Today, we want to zero in on the wisdom aspect of it. The fact that the fear of God is wisdom. The fear of God is wisdom. That's what I want to zero in today on wisdom. I want to talk a bit about wisdom. And so today, as we zero in on wisdom, under the theme, choose wisdom. It's time to relocate. So, when you think about wisdom, I know we normally think about wisdom as something that you possess. You know, when someone is wise, you know, he is considered someone who has attained a particular level in life. And whilst the word wisdom would be used in many respects to speak of even skilled individuals. So, for example, a person who's a carpenter would say that this man is wise in carpentry or wise in manipulating wood. And so his wisdom is in carpentry. So that's where his wisdom is at. And that would speak to his skill, the skill that he has mastered. So he has mastered carpentry. And so his wisdom is in carpentry. So while wisdom it can be used in that context, in that way, here Solomon and what he speaks about wisdom, we have to understand that it speaks to something far greater than just a particular skill. It speaks to something far greater. And so therefore, let's look at this metaphor that he has used here and see if we can understand certain things about wisdom. What he's saying about wisdom. What is Solomon saying that wisdom is? So the first thing he says here is that wisdom has built her house. And he describes the kind of house that wisdom has built. So he says wisdom has built her house. She has hewn out her 7 pillars. She has hewn out her 7 pillars. She has built her house and she has hewn out her 7 pillars. Somehow this phrase of 7 pillars might not suggest anything to us from our own culture. But when you understand this in the context of the culture within which Solomon spoke, you'll understand clearly what he's saying. First of all, when you think about Israel in the time of Solomon, how were the houses built? What kind of houses were people living in? And this phrase caused some sort of not confusion, but a mix of unknowingness among those who would have studied scriptures. And they would have said that this phrase somehow doesn't find explanation in a lot of, in how the houses were built in Israel at the time. And so as they look at the houses that people were living in at the time, they found that the houses never looked anything like what Solomon described here. 7 pillars. Normal regular houses don't carry 7 pillars. But a further research and archaeology has revealed that this reference that Solomon makes here is not referencing the normal everyday houses of Israel in the time, but he's referencing the luxurious houses, the house that the wealthy and the affluent would have built in their time. He's referencing the houses that the persons who are considered the upper echelons of society, the elites, would have built these kind of houses. And so 7 pillars, what he talks about here is that archaeology has revealed that this refers to a patio or a porch or a walkway that leads to the main entrance of the house. They'll be built and the roof of that walkway, that patio, would be supported by 7 pillars. And so that gave understanding to this phrase that Solomon is talking about not just regular houses. He's talking about the luxurious house that would have had a patio, that the roof of that patio rests upon 7 pillars. And that the walkway or porch would lead to the main entrance of the house. We see this kind of design in many houses today. Not the houses that are regularly built by the normal persons, but the houses of the upper echelons of society. The White House in America has pillars at its main entrance, where you would actually walk through that patio or porch. It has pillars. So you'd see houses with this sort of design around. And sometimes you see houses around with these pillars in a sort of semicircular patio where these pillars would support the roof of that patio. So we see this design around. And we can attest to the fact that these kind of designs, we don't see them on regular normal houses. We see them on houses of the upper class of society. The persons who are considered wealthy, not the normal everyday houses. And so it's the upper middle class and the upper classes of persons you would see with these houses. So Solomon is saying here, wisdom has built her house, and it's not just any house, it's a luxurious house. Wisdom has built her luxurious house, and the patio is supported by 7 pillars. It's not a regular everyday house. Next thing he says here is that wisdom, she hath killed her beast. She hath mingled her wine, and hath also furnished her table. Now he speaks to here of a preparation, and this speaks to a celebration, a feast being prepared, because he says she has killed her beast, not one, but beast. The actual word used, the actual Hebrew word there, just simply means to slaughter, the slaughter. And so by essence, it is speaking to her killing several animals to prepare for this feast. Among these animals killed, I would suppose that there is what is referred to as the fatted calf. Now in Israel, there's a practice among the Israelis that particularly in those times, I can't speak to present day, but in those times, there's a practice of the Israelis that they would have a calf and they would put this calf in a stall, and this calf would not go out with the rest of the herd to graze in the open fields. He'll remain in that stall and will be fed in that stall. This calf, all he does day and night is just eat and sleep. And they're fattening him up. Make sure that he still is lean, not flesh. So they feed him in the stall. He doesn't come out of the stall. So he wouldn't get all bogged down with pests out there and parasites. He wouldn't have many scars on him. So this calf is kept in the stall and cared for and fed in the stall and groomed to be well lean. And what would happen is that this calf would not be brought out and slaughtered and used unless there's a major significant celebration. In the story of the prodigal son in St. Luke chapter 15, we see there that it is said when he returned to his father's house, his father killed a fatted calf. That references to this calf that is kept in a stall and fed and groomed for a special occasion. So the father killed a fatted calf as if a dignitary had visited the house. This is part of why the elder son was upset, because the father is treating this abandoner, this prodigal who took all the money, went away and squandered it, and father is treating him like a dignitary. He put a robe upon him, put a ring on his finger, put shoes on his feet, and killed a fatted calf, made a big feast for him. I would suppose that Solomon is also referencing that this fatted calf would have been killed in this celebration. So you can imagine this woman build a nice, luxurious house and throws a big celebration in her house opening. But not only that, we find that wisdom also goes a step further. Having prepared her table, having mingled her wine. Now, I want you to understand mingling of wine. You see, wine fermenting in those jars. When they pour it out, it would have not have been sweetened. So when she mingled her wine, it means that she had her sweeteners to it and maybe little spices to make the wine tasty, make it taste good. So the fermented wine, to drink it like that, wouldn't have tasted good at all. But now when it says she mingled her wine, it means she sweetened it and add the spices to it to make that wine drink good. So that's what she does, mingled her wine. So in essence, Solomon says, this woman, wisdom, she has built her luxurious house. She has furnished that house. She has now shown a celebration. And this celebration is happening in the house of wisdom. She has prepared the table. She has sweetened the wine. Everything is made ready. This is what he's telling us, that in wisdom, everything is prepared. Everything is prepared. The next thing he says is that the wisdom has sent out her maidens. And the maidens go out. And they go out into the town upon the high places, and they echo out the message. They cry out in the high places of the city, and they say, whoso is simple, let him turn hither. They're calling for people to come to this celebration. Come on in, enter. As for him that wanteth understanding, she said to him, come eat of my bread. In wisdom, everything is prepared. All you have to do is come in and partake. Come in and partake. This highlights for us, friends, that when it comes to wisdom, you don't have to go and create anything. You don't have to go and recreate the wheel. You don't have to go and create nothing. It's already done. It's already prepared. This tells me that wisdom is something that you don't go and build and create or prepare. Wisdom is already prepared. All the factors and all the different areas of wisdom is already prepared. All you have to do is go therein. This tells me that wisdom is not something you possess. Wisdom is somewhere you are, somewhere you go. In other words, it is who you become. It's a place from which you stand. It's a place you go. So wisdom, that tells me that wisdom speaks to a particular mindset or attitude that you have. It is the way you approach life. It speaks to the way you look at life. It's a different plane from where the normal people stand. You may be standing on the earth, regular earth. But wisdom, when it comes to wisdom, it is to stand on a different plane. You see things from a different perspective. You see life from a different purview. You look at life differently. Your attitude towards your problems, your attitude towards the situation is different because you are standing on the plane of wisdom. Wisdom is not something you possess. Wisdom speaks to who you are. It's who you become. It is who you become. It's not what you have. Wisdom is who you become. So when Solomon talks about this, he's showing you that you need to go to where wisdom is. You need to relocate from where you are to where wisdom is, because wisdom is, and everything is prepared there. It's a plane of thought. And when I talk about a plane of thought, I'm talking about a mindset. A mindset. A place from where your thinking is far higher and greater than the normal thinking of life. It is on a higher plane that you think. You walk on a higher plane. You don't walk on these terrestrial planes here. You walk on a higher plane. Paul, in his writings to the Ephesians, he says you are seated in heavenly places in Christ Jesus. In other words, Paul is saying to you, you are on a different plane from what we know down here. So in other words, you don't approach life the way others do. You don't approach life from the perspective that others do. You approach life from a higher plane. So when the man who sees the problems in life and he goes to and he says, oh God, help me, I'm dying, they're killing me, these people don't like me, they don't love me, and it drives him to a place of pity. It drives him to a place of self-pity where he now begins to look at himself as less than, or as someone who is not deserving to live. It may drive him to think about suicide. But the man who is in the place of wisdom, the man who operates on the plane of wisdom, he looks at the same problem and he doesn't see his demise. He sees an opportunity. He looks at the same problem and he sees an opportunity. An opportunity to become better. An opportunity to rise higher. An opportunity to become richer. That is what wisdom does. When you live in the place of wisdom, you see things from a different purview. Others sit and mope and groan and mourn and fear. But a man who operates on the plane of wisdom, he sees it from a different perspective. You see, your perspective in life can literally change the very projection of your life. It will change your life totally, radically. It can radically change your life. Just the perspective you have of life can radically change your life. Just by changing your perspective. Just by relocating to a different plane can literally transform your life. Just changing one key aspect of your life can change your life in totality. Here, friends, it is said that wisdom has built that house, and all you have to do is come in. Come in and enjoy the luxuries of this house. Someone rightly says that success can be calculated. Success can be calculated because, mark you, if you enter this house that Solomon describes, if you enter this house, tell me, will you not eat of the food prepared? Will you not drink of the wine mingled? Will you not eat of the meat that was prepared from the beasts that were slaughtered? Will you go there and just sit down and look around and not partake? Let me tell you something. A man who is wise, you can never strip him down. A man who is wise, who operates on the plane of wisdom, you can never make him empty. You literally can take everything from him today, strip him down to nothing, and within a month, he's back to where you took him from or higher. Why? Because you think it was his possessions that gave him his position in life. But you misconstrue the whole thing. It wasn't his possession that gave him the position he has in life. It was the position in life that gave him the possessions he has. A man who operates on the plane of wisdom, you can take everything from him, and within no time, he has it all back together again. Someone rightly says, if you take all the money from the persons in this world who are wealthy and distribute that money, that wealth, to all the people of the earth. He says within 2 weeks, all that money will be back in the hands of the same wealthy persons. Because we tend to think that it is money and possessions that make us wealthy. When in truth and in fact, money and possession has nothing to do with wealth. Wealth is not about what you possess. Wealth is about who you are and who you become. So in essence, Solomon is echoing the same sentiment when he says to us, come to the house of wisdom, because she has built her house and it's a house of luxury. And when you operate from the house of wisdom, you can never lack anything. That's truly what Solomon is telling you. That wisdom will cause that you don't lack a thing in life. You are amply supplied for. You live in luxury. You live in abundance because you have the abundance mindset, which is what true wealth is. So wisdom is not in what you possess. Wisdom is in who you are or who you become. The 7 pillars here, friends, that Solomon talks about, echoing to us that it's a luxurious house. And so wisdom in essence puts us on a different plane. Wisdom is a different plane of life. And you have to go to wisdom. In other words, wisdom don't come to you. You have to go to it. The call is made to all who would want to come. So wisdom is available to every man. Wisdom is not exclusive to a selected few. She did not go into the town to call certain individuals. She echoed the call from the high places in the town. In other words, she wanted every man to hear. So she sends her maidens out to the high places of the town, and they cry out to every man, come in hither. So the call to come to the plane of wisdom is echoed to every man. It is not for a selected few. And some people will think that, oh no, wisdom is just for certain people. No, nonsense. Wisdom is for every man. Wisdom cry out to every single man, come in. Come on hither. Come in and enjoy the fruit of my house. The food prepared for you. Wealth is in wisdom. That's what Solomon is telling you. The house is built. The meals are prepared. The wine is mingled. The table is set. In wisdom is your supply. In wisdom is everything you need for life. In wisdom, you have everything provided. So it's not about getting the things. It's about getting wisdom, because when you get wisdom, you have everything. When you have wisdom, you lack nothing. So Solomon is echoing these truths to us in this text, and we can stand here today and draw out many more truths from this text. But I just want to take out the ones that I can share with you in the time allotment that we have. So Solomon tells us that wisdom puts us on a different plane in life. It's somewhere you must go. You have to make an effort to leave where you are to go to where wisdom is. That tells me that getting wisdom or getting to where wisdom is an effort on my part to abandon my mindset that I currently have. The way I now think, I must abandon that. The way I approach life, I must abandon that. The way I talk to people, I must abandon that. The way I treat others, I must abandon that. Go to where wisdom is, because from that plane, it puts me on a plane where my attitude changes. Wisdom puts you on a plane where your attitude changes. Your mindset changes. So where before you had a mindset of scarcity, which pushes you to treat people with disregard, because scarcity mindset tells you that they're going to come and take whatever you have. So you have to hold on to it all your might. And you push off everybody who wants to come close, because you want to keep what you possess. You want to hold on to it. But the abundance mindset says, if they ask you for one, give them two. If they take away your coat, give them your cloak also. That's the abundance mindset. The abundance mindset knows that their worth is not contained in what they possess. They know that their wealth is not contained in what they possess. You see, it's a foolish man who has wealth and refuses to share it or give it because he thinks that this what he has is what makes him wealthy. He's a fool. The Bible says he's a fool. Isn't that what Christ said to the rich man? He had possessions, that's why he's called rich. Christ says, go sell all you have. Go sell all you have. The young man, the gentleman walked away because he couldn't do that. He's a fool. There's the other one that Christ talks about too, who had his field. I mean, he must have been a big field. Because this man looks at his field and it was ripe and he reaped his field. He had his harvest. And normally when they have harvest, they have a celebration at the end of the harvest to celebrate God blessing them with plenty. But this man, his barns were full, had no more place to store all of what he reaped. You realize that when God gives you an harvest, it's always more than what you can contain. But this man refused to give. He refused to share what God has blessed him with. And so he says, well, my barns are full. I'm going to build bigger barns to contain or to hoard whatever I've received. And so God says, thou fool, tonight your soul is required of thee. So you see, the scarcity mindset will drive you to behave like that. The scarcity mindset says, whatever I receive, it is mine. I can't give it away because I'm going to need it tomorrow. I'm going to need it next month. I'm going to need it next year. It must last me as long as it can. I can't share because I don't know if I'm going to get more tomorrow. That's a scarcity mindset. The abundance mindset knows that his resources is not contained in the things he possesses. He knows that his life is not sustained by his possession. He knows his life is not sustained by the money he has. He knows his life is not sustained by his possession. He knows his life is sustained by where he is and who he is. So Solomon says, wisdom is calling for you to come. Come on, choose wisdom and relocate. Relocate from the scarcity mindset. Relocate from the city of scarcity and come to the city of wisdom, because in this city, everything is provided. You don't have a fear to give. You don't have a hesitation to give. You don't have no qualms about giving, because you know that these that I have are not what sustain me. It is because of who I am. It is because of where I am. I am in the house of wisdom. So therefore I'm supplied for. You see, wisdom will tell us that I don't need to make you lose for me to win. Wisdom in the abundance mindset would have told you that I don't need to kill you for me to live. It would have told you that we all can live. We all can rise to the top. We all can become the best. We all can be wise. We all can be amply and more than enough supplied for. But you see, we look at life in a way. We have one piece of land that our father has died and left behind. It's 5 of us. And this one piece of land can't share for all 5 of us. And so we must fight it out. We must fight it out so that the winner of the fight gets the land. And everybody else, losers, go and die for all you care. That's a scarcity mindset. The abundance mindset would apply a different thought to that. You know, I hear a story about a particular ethnic group that goes into England. My aunt tells me this story. And she says, one of these ethnic group will come to England. And that person will work, rent one little room, and he'll work a job, save his money in that one room, or a flat they call it. And he will save his money, send for his brother, and the 2 of them come and the 2 of them start work. And they save money, both of them save. Now where there was 1 saving, now 2 saving now. And in no time, they send for the next relatives or brothers or the next siblings. And if it is 7 of them, they keep doing that until all 7 of them are there. And guess what? They're all living in the one flat. All of them living in the one flat. Then all 7 of them work. All 7 of them work hard, save all that money, and buy 1 more house. 1 brother move up or live in that house. And there's all 7 of them still continue working, saving. And they do that until they have 7 houses where all 7 brothers can go live in. And she said that's how they do it. They bond together until every man is standing on his own 2 feet and can survive and thrive. Till all of them, each of them have their own house. It starts with 1 doing that until all 7 have it. Why? because they apply a different mindset to the same problem. You have another ethnic group that will go to the same place. He goes. He leaves 9 brothers at home. When he goes there, he might have the decency to send for one. And that one come. And he says, well, I send for you. You send for somebody else. And he's gone. This one brother have to now work and do what he did to send for one more. And they keep doing that. But the problem is, when you bond together, it creates more leverage for you to solve the problem in a shorter period of time. And so these ethnic groups would have come together and built each other to the point where each other become independent. Different mindset to the same problem and brings a better solution. So it's a mindset that we have to focus on where you are. The mindset is what will determine your wealth, your attitude, how you treat others. That will determine your wealth. That will determine who you are. Your attitude, your mindset, how you treat people. You live life on a different plane when you are in the house of wisdom. You live life on a different plane. Problem come and you don't see problem. You see what? Opportunity. But I tell you what else. When you are living in the house of wisdom, you have vision. You have vision. You're going to see that later on in this text as we go down. But that might come at another day. But nonetheless, I want you to understand what wisdom is here. Wisdom is not what you have. It is where you are, and you have to go there. It's not going to come to you. You have to go there. You have to make the effort to abandon where you are. Abandon the mindset you now have. Throw it aside. Get and acquire the mindset of wisdom. Get and acquire the attitude that wisdom has. Because it's an attitude. It's a mindset. It's a way of life. It's how you live life. So in wisdom, you will find all of this. Everything prepared for you. Now watch this. If you want to understand how truly wisdom, it can be calculated, the results of a wise man can be calculated. Well, you can knock down a wise man. You can knock him down 7 times. But every time you knock him down, he's going to be back up again. You know, there are some trees, when you cut them down, they never stop growing. As a matter of fact, they grow more. The more you cut them, the more they grow. That's like what a wise man is. You cut him down today, tomorrow you see all 4 or 5 shoots spring out. Him coming out mighty and more abundant than how he was before. If you had 1 shoot and you cut it down, boy, tomorrow you come back, you might see 7 shoots. You can't keep a wise man down no matter what you do. You put a wise man in prison, and he turned the prison into a business. And he thrives in prison. In other words, you cannot imprison a wise man. Cannot, no matter where you put him, he's going to thrive. Look at Joseph. Joseph would be considered a man who is living on the plane of wisdom. Because his brothers sold him into slavery. And instead of this man being bitter and unforgiving about it, when he found himself in Potiphar's house, the man applied himself so well that Potiphar says, no man, you take charge of everything, man, you're good. He became the head of Potiphar's house. Second to the owner of the house. He was in charge of everything. Only the wife he wasn't in charge of. Everything else, him run it. A man sold into slavery. That's the attitude of a man who lives in the house of wisdom. Anywhere you put him, he thrives. Potiphar's wife told a lie on the man, and they threw him in prison. And in prison, the man became the head of the whole prison. He might run the prison. So you put a wise man in prison, he become the man who run the prison. Head warder. That's what he'll become. You put him on a highland, he becomes king of that highland, or prime minister of that highland, or whatever you want to call it, president. It doesn't matter where you put this man, he's going to thrive and be the best at it. He went to Egypt, man. In Egypt, the man became the prime minister of Egypt, second only to the king, the Pharaoh. That is a man who walks and lives in the house of wisdom. This little man was wise. His wisdom exceeded his years. The tradition of the Jews has it that Joseph was the one who actually created the Hebrew alphabet. The alphabet that the Hebrew uses. It's believed that he's the one who created it. This man had a wealth of wisdom, because when you assess the Hebrew alphabet and the Hebrew language, you'll realize that it is the language that God spoke. I have no doubt about that. He's the man who is credited with creating that alphabet, the written language, the written Hebrew language, not the spoken one. The spoken one came from God, but he's the one who made it a written language. So he devised all of that to make it a written language. So the philosophy and ideas and concepts of the Hebrew language existed long before Joseph. It came from God. But he put those concepts, those ideas, those words, those sounds to symbols that it can be read and written. Joseph did that. A man who lived in the house of wisdom. He was wise. You can't keep a wise man down. David was also another wise man. Live in the house of wisdom. David was born to Jesse. And Jesse had 7 sons. And Jesse, when Samuel came to his house to say, I'm here to anoint one of your sons as king, Jesse never even thought of David, because David was not on his mind. David is not considered one of his sons, because David was a son he had not with his wife, but with somebody else, an extramarital affair. So David was not from his marriage. It was an extramarital affair that brought about David. David says, behold, I was born in sin and shapen in iniquity. In sin did my mother conceive me. David is telling you that he was conceived out of an act of sin. Jesse was having an affair with his wife. He was having an affair. And that was what? Out of what David was born. So when David said, I'm born in sin and shapen in iniquity, that's what he's talking about. So David was not one of Jesse's prized son. He was abandoned, rejected, put aside. Go feed the sheep, boy. And the other sons that Jesse had, he had high hopes for them. And so he had these sons around, you know, as his prized possessions. So whilst Jacob had Joseph as his prized son and the other sons as those, go feed the sheep. It's the other way around for Jesse. Jesse had his 7 sons as his prized possession, but this one son as the one that has to go feed the sheep, the rejected one. So Solomon went through all the sons he presented. None of them was the one that God chosen. He made them pass again, and none of them was it. And Jesse says, man, you're not no more son. You sure you're not no more son? I says, oh, I have one more son, man, but he's feeding the sheep. I couldn't him, man. I'm not him. I can't him that at all. Samuel said, send for him. And Samuel sent for David, and David came, and Samuel, the Spirit of God says, that's him. Rise up and anoint him. The Bible uses a word about David. It says David behaved himself wisely. David went, you see, Jesse sent him to feed sheep. But the sheep feeder, the shepherd became the king, became the anointed one, because the David never went to feed sheep with anger or bitterness. He never said, my father hates me. The anguish he expressed in the statements he made in that psalm where it says, in sin did my mother conceive me, he was not an expression of bitterness. It was not an expression of anger towards his father. It was an expression of his condition. But he never allowed his condition to determine his destiny. In the condition he was placed, he thrived, he lived, he survived. He protected those sheep with his life. He fought off a lion. He fought off a bear. He protected those sheep with his life. That's the honor of a man who lives in the house of wisdom. But a man who lives in the house of foolishness, he would have not given his life for those sheep. He would have fought off those threats that came with the sheep. He would have run and hide and came and told us, oh, lion came and killed off the sheep. But David, because he lived in the house of wisdom, he says, this is my turf. This is my responsibility. These are my sheep. These are my sheep. You're not taking one. And he killed the lion. And he killed the bear with the strength and power of God. When you live in the house of wisdom, nobody can keep you down. They may put you in a pit to serve. It doesn't matter. You'll become the Lord in the pit. It does not determine what you become. It does not determine where you'll be. Where they put you to serve, serve with honor, serve with pride, serve with dignity, and serve, if it's the last thing you do, serve with honor. Because you're living in the house of wisdom. Change your location. It's time to relocate. Choose wisdom. Choose to live in the house of wisdom and live with honor. Saul sought David's life, and David ran away from Saul, went to go live in some outskirts towns. And when David went there to live, the people respected him so much, they wanted to make him king of their city. But David was already anointed king of Israel, the same country he was a fugitive from. Didn't matter. Even as a fugitive, David was a leader. He led 300 men or more sometimes. This young man, he was a fugitive, but as a fugitive, he lived as a king. When you live in the house of wisdom, it doesn't matter where they discard you. It doesn't matter what they say about you. It doesn't really matter how they treat you, because you live in the house of wisdom. And in the house of wisdom, your attitude is far removed and above what they are doing to you. You live and you operate from a different perspective. You see things from a different plane. Wisdom is available to all. But I want to take you down further, friends. And I want you to drop you down to verse 7. Because verse 7 says, clearly, he that reproveth a scorner getteth to himself shame, and he that rebuketh a wicked man getteth himself a blot. Reprove not a scorner, lest he hate thee. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love thee. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be yet wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. Now, the question I asked when I read this, the question that came to mind, for what reason would you be rebuking a wise man? Because the way we understand wisdom, you wouldn't have never have an opportunity to rebuke a wise man. He's wise. But the scripture here says, rebuke a wise man, and he will love thee. You know what this tells me, friend? This tells me clearly, as it says, a wise man is not above rebuke. A wise man is not above rebuke. In other words, being wise don't make you perfect. Being wise don't make you exempt from making mistakes. Making mistakes is still going to be a part of your life. Even though you live in the house of wisdom, you are still liable to make mistakes. You are still liable to do things for which you must be rebuked. But Solomon says, you rebuke a scorner, and he will shame you. The man says, he that reproveth a scorner getteth himself shame. He will shame you. If you rebuke a wicked man, you get yourself a blot. In other words, this man is going to rebuke you in such a way you're going to regret ever trying to rebuke him. That word blot, it means to injure. So you go rebuke a scorner, or you go rebuke a wicked man. Might slap you in the face. It might even shoot you. Have you never heard about what some of these guys talk about in their music? Step on my toe, you might get a gunshot. Say certain things to him and make him look small, he might go shoot you. That's a wicked man. Solomon says, don't waste your time, man. Do not go about reproving a scorner. You know what we call the scorner there? The scorner is someone who is prideful, boastful. That's what the word means. Boastful, or someone who prides themselves, who brags. Someone who is full of ear. That's what the word means, to be filled with ear, to be eerie. Full of ear. Not have no substance, he just boasty, full of nothing. Tell himself that he's the top man, he's the best, he's a big man around here. And he's empty like a balloon, full of air. Blown up like a balloon, big, but full of nothing. That's what scorner means. Solomon says, don't rebuke or reprove a scorner. You're going to be shamed. He's going to shame you. Because you see the bossy people and the prideful people, they don't like to feel small enough. So he might say something on the right, and you're going to bring yourself now to correct him or to reprove him. He's going to shame you. That's what Solomon says. But Solomon says, rebuke a wise man, and he will love you for it. In other words, Not because you live in the house of wisdom doesn't mean you're exempt from rebuke. So in other words, Solomon is indirectly telling you how to live as a wise person. Love and embrace rebuke. Utilize rebuke to make yourself better. He says, reprove not a scorner lest he hate thee. Rebuke a wise man and he will love thee. Give instruction to a wise man and he will yet be wiser. Teach a just man and he will increase in learning. How on earth are you going to teach a wise man? You would think a wise man is wise, yes, and don't need to be taught. In other words, Solomon is also telling you that in wisdom, there's no pride. Wisdom, in the house of wisdom, there's no pride. So someone who is prideful can't live in the house of wisdom. It's time to relocate. Relocate from the house of pride and come to the house of wisdom, because you must abandon pride, come to wisdom. Pride is foolishness. To be boastful or prideful or airy is foolishness. You need to leave that and come to the house of wisdom. It's time to relocate. Choose wisdom. Relocate and come to the house of wisdom. Solomon brings us to the very pivot of this discourse. He says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. You want to know how to get wisdom? You don't want to know how to get to the house of wisdom? That's what he's telling you here. Because the word beginning, the word translated beginning, it means the point at which something starts. Now you put that in comparison with the word in Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. It's not the same word. Because the word in Genesis is Bereshit. The word here is a different word. And it does not mean the same thing as the word in Genesis. So Solomon says that that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. The beginning. Wisdom starts from here. So wisdom is like a journey. Wisdom is like a journey. So on that journey, you'll be rebuked. On that journey, you have to take the lesson because you'll be taught. So take the rebuke, learn from it. Take the instructions, learn from them. Because wisdom is like a journey and it starts from a point. Where does wisdom start from? He says to start on the journey of wisdom, to get to the house of wisdom, to operate in the house of wisdom. Solomon says it begins with fearing God. It begins with fearing God. So Solomon says, if you want to get to the house of wisdom, start by fearing God. So he's telling you how to get to the house of wisdom. He doesn't just give you the metaphors, but he just tells you now how to get to the wisdom, how to get and to start a journey of wisdom. Start by fearing God. Start by reverencing God. It is now that you must understand that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. It's not that you must also understand that the fear of God is to abandon evil. It's to abandon evil, to hate evil. When the thought comes to you to cheat your brother out of an agreement that you made, you know, you and your brother decide to do a business venture, and you put in a certain amount and he puts in a certain amount, and you agree with each other that you will split it down the middle. 50% of the profit for him, 50% for you. That's your agreed decision. But somewhere along the journey, you assessed the working throughout the time period. And you say, but I do more work than him. I am in the office earlier than him. I leave later than him. I do more of the business ventures than him. And so you determine and you decide that, well, I need to get more than him. And so you say, well, because this year I work harder than you, work more than you, I'm going to give you 40 and I take 60. Is that respectful? Is that honorable? It is not. Because in the house of wisdom, that is not respect. That's honor. That's not honorable. The agreement is 50-50. So it doesn't matter whether or not you work more than him. That's a whole different ball game. You might have to pick up a different agreement for that. But you already agreed to 50-50. You can't change the agreement in the middle of the time period allotted for that agreement. Because when you come to the end of that time period, you have to do it the way you agree that will be done. That's honorable. You see, a person who thinks that the possessions he has is what makes him wealthy will always behave like that. Solomon says, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. If you fear God, you won't do that to your brother. If you fear God, you will never change the agreement in the middle of the plan. You'll never change what you agreed to. You'll live a life, a man of your word. If you say yes, it's going to be yes. If you say no, it's going to be no. You live life on a different plane when you live in the house of wisdom. When you operate from the house of wisdom, you live life on a different plane. You give your word and you live by it, no matter what it costs you. So for some people, it is a monetary cost of things that they use to determine whether they do something yes or no. So it doesn't matter whether they gave their word yes or not. If it's going to cost them too much, they're not going to do it anymore. They're going to abandon the plan. But wisdom, when you operate from the house of wisdom, because you fear God, you won't do that. If you fear God, you'll not talk to your brother a certain way. If you fear God, you'll never pray for your brother to be killed. How can you pray a prayer? God, kill him because he might wish bad for me. You see, you have to understand, if God ever answer your prayer, he might kill you. If God answers such a prayer, God will have to kill you. You know why? Because somewhere, the same person you are praying for God to kill, that person was praying for you to be killed. So if God answers your prayer, you must go answer that person the prayer too. Don't you understand when God says to us that whatever we want men to do to us, we must do the same thing to them? He says, whatsoever evil that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. Matthew 7 verse 12, whatever you would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. Whatever you want man to do to you, you do it to man. So if you want somebody to love and care for you, love and care for men. Love and care for men, and men will love and care for you. It begins with you doing it. The action that you desire begins with you. If you want somebody to love you, love them. And then somebody will love you in return. If you want somebody to give to you, give to somebody, and somebody will give to you in return. Whatever you put out there, it's coming right back at you. I wonder sometimes when you hear people pray some of these prayers, you wonder sometimes they really think about what they're praying. If they know the principles of God's word. If you fear God, you'll never pray such a prayer. If you fear God, you won't pray certain prayers. I was reading a prayer the other day, and it bothers me up to today. And the prayer says, in the prayer it is said, everyone who is on the evil altar praying for my demise. The prayer says, Lord, cage them up spiritually. Now, it bothers me, you know why? Because that fulfills the devil's desire. That fulfills the devil's wish. It doesn't fulfill God's wish. It fulfills the devil's wish. It fulfills what the devil wants. John 10:10 tells us the thief comes but to kill, steal, destroy. But I am come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. So Jesus says, it's the devil's mission to kill you, to steal from you, and to destroy you. Ask yourself the simple question. In a prayer like that, if someone who is trying to hurt me, if I pray for that person to be killed and that person is killed in the attitude and life of trying to hurt me, who gets glory? Who rejoices over that death? Certainly not God. Because God doesn't get glory in that. It is the devil who rejoices. Why? Because hell gets one more soul. I refuse to populate hell. I refuse to populate hell with no more soul. It will not be on account of me that hell is populated. It will be on account of my actions and my words that heaven gets populated. That's my mission, to populate heaven, not hell. So if I'm going to pray for those who are against me, for them to be killed, to kill spiritually, I'm sending them to hell. So how can I be a minister of hell? I am not going to be no minister or servant of hell. I'm not going to populate hell. I'm going to populate heaven. So my prayer will be for God to save him, to rescue him from the clutches of these demons that control his life. These demons demons that caused him to stand on the altar, this evil altar that caused him to stand there, I'm going to pray for his salvation. I watched a broadcast one day with a minister. And here's why you must learn, you know your mission and know your vision. This minister was preaching and he was at the end of his sermon and he got a prophetic utterance from God that there was somebody in the audience with some charms. He gave the utterance and the person came forward. When the person came forward, they threw down the charms in front of him. And the person says, I'm here to kill you. The gentleman turned to the preacher and said, I'm here to kill you. My mission here today is to kill you. The preacher laughed and says, well, why? And he said, because you have been bothering our kingdom. And I'm sent here to kill you. To get rid of you. The minister ministered to that man. Ministered the love of God to him. Not hate, not anger, not bitterness, not revenge, not vengeance. He ministered love. He looked at him and told him about the love of Jesus. And that man gave his heart to the Lord right there in church. Gave his heart to God. No, I can't be on a mission to populate hell. No way. I'm on a mission to populate heaven. So I am not going to pray for God to cage nobody spiritually. I'm on a mission to set captives free, not to cage nobody. I'm here on that mission. On the plane of wisdom, from the house of wisdom, that is how you will operate. You operate on a different plane. You have vision. You see, lastly, friends, let me show you something else about wisdom. In this text, Solomon, this text can be broken down to 3 parts. From 1 to 6, 7 to 12, and 13 to 18. You'll see Solomon changes his argument in these 3 sections. 3 different arguments. From verse 13 downwards, we see Solomon changes his argument there and begin to talk about the foolish woman. But he used a word in this discourse talking about a foolish woman. So Solomon talks about wisdom and how to get wisdom. But now he's talking about what to avoid. Avoid the foolish woman. He says the foolish woman is clamorous. She's loud and vulgar. That's what clamorous means. Loud and stubborn. She's simple and knoweth nothing. Oh, void of understanding. For she sitteth at her door or her house on a seat in the high places of the city to chat to call passengers, people who are passing by, who go right on their ways. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. And as for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, stolen waters are sweet. And bread eaten in secret is pleasant. There are some who speak like that. I won't have to explain all of the details of this context here, friends, but let me get to my word. But he knoweth not that the dead are there, and that her guests are in the depths of hell. You see, in the house of wisdom, you have vision. In the house of the foolish, there's no vision. The word says in verse 18 that he knoweth not that the dead are there. He has no vision. He has no insight. He can't perceive that in the house of the foolish, they are dead. Can't perceive that in the house of the foolish, the guests are in hell. What he looks and sees with the naked eyes is the partying and the reveling. It looks good. But he doesn't perceive that right there in the midst of that jubilation and that dancing and enjoying of themselves, right there in the midst of that is hell. Death is in there. He doesn't see. He sees with his naked eyes. Doesn't see and perceive from the perspective of wisdom. Wisdom puts you on a different plane, gives you perspective, gives you knowledge, gives you wisdom, gives you honor, gives you respect. It puts you on a different plane. When you live and operate in the house of wisdom, you are operating from a plane where you see things in their true perspective. In the house of the foolish, you are blinded. The jubilation blind you. You want to live in the house of wisdom? Start by fearing God. Start by fearing God. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. It's a point from which something starts. Hallelujah. You see, in Genesis, the word used there for beginning, it simply means the sum total of, the origin of a thing. Now that concept of the sum total of, you must understand that Genesis is going to tell you the origin of everything. So in Genesis, you'll find the origin of everything. Some weeks ago, I showed you that in Genesis, it shows you the origin of bad mind. Yeah, man. And Jamaica I start from. Start from way back then. Everything you know among men today, you can trace it back to Genesis. All things find their origin in Genesis. It's there. That word also means the sum total of. So, you give an explanation or an example of this. You see, Adam is said to be the father of humanity. So, Adam is the sum total of humanity. Because humanity begins in Adam. In Adam, all of humanity can be found. That's what Paul meant when he says we were all in Adam when he sinned. We were all in him. And so therefore, we must understand that Adam is the sum total of the human race. The entire human race was inside Adam. So it's not a beginning point, as a word that is used here. It is the sum total of. It's like the DNA of a thing. The origin where it starts from, where it springs from, and branches out. So Adam is the root of humanity. He's the beginning, the beginning, the origin of humanity, some total of humanity. He's the one that God creates. And yet in him, we were all created by God. So God won creation. Numbers now over 7 billion. So he's the sum total of humanity. So that's a different word from this one. This word here that is translated beginning, Tehillat. It is that word that means point from which something started. So Bereshit, Tehillat. There's two different words. So wisdom begins with the fear of God. It's a journey. It's a journey. But in this journey, you operate from a different plane. In this journey, you have everything supplied for you. In this journey, you have vision. You see things in their true perspective. It shines a different light on things. And you see things what they truly are. You want to operate from the house of wisdom? Begin to fear God. If you fear God, you won't talk nonsense. If you fear God, you won't mistreat your brothers. If you fear God, you won't talk any cheap talk about, you just won't curse. Put it that way. If you fear God, you won't curse. Because you understand that God will deal with you if you do that. Whatever you put out there is going to come back to you. Right back at you. Right back at you. Amen? So today, I implore you, my friends, I implore you, loved ones, I implore you, saints of God, that you do strive to live in the house of wisdom. Choose wisdom. When you face your situations, choose the platform of wisdom because it's a higher plane. Don't approach your problems with the mindset of the terrestrial. Choose the mindset of the wise. Don't choose the mindset of the foolish. Choose the mindset of the wise. Relocate from the terrestrial plane of the foolish and choose rather to go live on the plane, the celestial plane of wisdom. It's a higher plane, a plane that is in the heavens. Hallelujah. Let's bow our heads. Father, we thank you, O God, for being here with us today, for truly being our Lord and our God, for being our guide, for being our help. In times when we are oppressed and perplexed on every side, it was you, Father, who painted the plain path on which we should trod. It is your Holy Spirit that lifted our feet and placed it on a higher ground. And as we rest obedient in your words, we were able to walk higher than the problems that perplexed. Today I ask you, Father, to Lord, in your wisdom and in your strength and in your power, take your children, raise them, Father, to a higher plane where they can live and operate in the house of wisdom, where, God, they can operate from the planes of wisdom, where, God, the words you speak, they will stand squarely on those words and be lifted to that plane of wisdom. God, where your fear, oh God, is driven into their hearts, where the reverence for you and the reverence for your words is restored to the hearts of your people, that they, Lord God, live for you and exist for your glory and for your magnification, oh God, to magnify your name day and night. Let our hearts be seasoned, O God, with your love. Let our hearts burn with your passion. That when we look at those who could be considered our enemies, those who hate us, when we look at them, oh God, our eyes will beam with your love. Our words will be seasoned with your love. Our actions will be seasoned with your love, oh God. And as we speak to them, we speak your love. That as we look towards them, Father, we will look towards them, they'll see your love emanating from our eyes. That as we act towards them, Father, it will be actions expressing your love. Teach us to love our enemies, God. Teach us to do good to those who despitefully use us and say all manner of evil against us, falsely, Lord. Help us, O God, to love them. Help us, O God, to be good and kind to them, O God. All because we want to bring glory to your name in this earth, and we want your kingdom to come to this earth, Father. So we live the culture of heaven here. We live the culture of your kingdom here, O God. And the culture of your kingdom is wisdom. The culture, O God, of your kingdom is wisdom. To operate and to live in wisdom, O God. We thank you, Father, for your goodness. We thank you for your peace. We thank you for your love that keeps us, Lord God. And even in the moments, oh God, when we are torn asunder, wanting to be torn asunder by those who seek our demise, may you lift our hearts, oh God, to that plane where we can see the truth of the attack. That we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the dark world that we're living in. Lord, may our hearts yearn after you, God, that in all things, Lord, will bring you glory. Be glorified in us and through us as we surrender, O God, to you and to your word. In Jesus' name, amen and amen. Hallelujah. Today you have learned, I would assume, some things concerning wisdom. Some of the truth that I've shown you here is that wisdom is available to all. Wisdom is available to everyone. You can live in the house of wisdom. It's not reserved for only a few, it's reserved for you. We also have shown to you that wisdom does not exempt you from being rebuked. But when you are rebuked, respond from the house of wisdom. Respond from the plane of wisdom. Because Solomon says when he rebuke a wise man, he will love you for it. He'll appreciate it. When you give instruction to a wise man, he will get wiser still. When you are taught and when you are given instruction, you must also understand that being wise, living in the house of wisdom, doesn't exempt you from being taught. Amen? So I want you to take these truths, along with many others that I've shared today. Go over and watch this video over again. And share these truths with your friends as you go over them and learn them. Share them with people that you meet. Let's spread this culture of living in the house of wisdom. Let's share the culture of heaven. Let's spread this culture of heaven around. Let God's kingdom come to this earth. But first, it must come to your heart. If the kingdom of God has come to your heart this morning, I implore you, go before God. Ask him to forgive you of your sins. Ask him to cleanse you from all unrighteousness and become your Lord. Make him your Lord and your Savior. Making Christ your Lord means you're going to live your life based on his instruction. When somebody is your Lord, they dictate your life to you. So making Christ your Lord means you're surrendering to making Christ the dictator over your life. If you have done that this morning, reach out to us. Reach out to us via the comment below, comment box, so you can reach out to us via our email, newhopeaogja@gmail.com, and let us know how you have prayed that prayer and given your heart to the Lord. And we'll find every way to give you the assistance you need for growing in God. Because the very next thing you need is the milk of God's word to grow thereby. Today, have a good day and be blessed in God. Be blessed in all you do. Have a good, a great, and godly day. Hallelujah. Bless the Lord. May the Lord cause his face to shine upon you and give you peace. And to all the mothers out there, a happy Mother's Day and a pleasant good afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day. And may God continue to bless you. Have a good day. Hallelujah. Thank you, O God. Blessed be your wonderful name. You are worthy.